Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We generally tend to think of human progress as this really neat, orderly progression, right? Like, first we discover fire, then we invent the wheel, we learn to farm, and then eventually, way down the line, we figure out how to brew a good beer. But, based on some truly mind-blowing archaeological evidence, we actually need to completely flip that script. Today we're diving into a concept that is just absolutely wild. Our relationship with alcohol actually predates humanity entirely.
So, if I asked you right now, when did humans discover alcohol? If you had to guess, you'd probably picture, ancient monks in stone cellars, or maybe early farmers in Mesopotamia. You probably assume brewing is a tradition that's, maybe a few thousand years old, right? Well, get ready to have your assumptions totally challenged.
Because the real answer? It's millions of years before humans even existed. Our relationship with alcohol actually begins about 10 million years ago on a forest floor in Africa. Just picture it. A small primate, our distant evolutionary ancestor, picking up a piece of fruit that had just been sitting on the ground a little bit too long. That seemingly insignificant moment, that is the true spark of our story.
Section 1. The Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. Okay, so back in 2014, a UC Berkeley biologist named Robert Dudley published what he called the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis, and it's brilliantly simple. Basically, when fruit falls off a tree and just sits there on the warm ground, its natural sugars start to break down. Yeast gets in and it naturally produces small amounts of ethanol. When our primate ancestors ate that fermenting fruit, it literally made them feel a little drunk. But more importantly, it was an incredibly rich, high-calorie food source, so they kept coming back for more. Over millions of years, they didn't just learn to tolerate alcohol, they literally evolved the biological drive to actively seek it out.
Section 2. Brewing before agriculture.
Now, the old story we were all taught in school goes exactly like this. Humans settled down, we started farming, built villages, and then eventually discovered fermentation as a byproduct. Well, actually, scratch that, because a monumental discovery at Rekafet Cave in Israel tells the exact opposite story. Archaeologists there found these 13,000-year-old stone mortars carved directly into the bedrock by a group called the Natufians. And inside those mortars, traces of deliberately fermented wheat and barley. Here's the absolute kicker, guys. The Natufians hadn't even invented agriculture yet. They were still nomadic hunter-gatherers. Making beer was so crucial to them that they figured out how to brew it before they even figured out how to plant seeds.
And they definitely weren't the only ones doing the seemingly impossible just for a drink. 10. We are talking 10 tons here. That is the weight of the massive stone pillars found at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, which were built roughly 12,000 years ago.
For years, this site was like a giant puzzle, and archaeologists were totally baffled. Why in the world would nomadic hunter-gatherers organize the absolutely backbreaking labor required to move 10-ton stones up a hill? Well, the mystery started to unravel when they tested these large stone vats at the site and found chemical traces of fermented grain. They were brewing at Göbekli Tepe on a massive, massive scale. So this wasn't a permanent home, it was actually a monumental gathering place where nomads traveled to engage in rituals and huge feasts, completely fueled by early beer.
There's this quote I absolutely love from Patrick McGovern, who is a leading expert on ancient alcohol. He argues for this exact paradigm shift. He says humans didn't start farming to make bread, they started farming to make beer. And when you think about it, it makes so much sense. Bread requires complex grinding, kneading, building ovens, baking. Beer, it's way simpler. You just soak wild grain in water and let natural fermentation do the heavy lifting for you. The social desire to gather and drink was arguably a much, much stronger motivator to settle down than just eating grain. So alcohol wasn't some byproduct of civilization, it was literally the reason we settled down in the first place.
Section 3. The First Drink Recipes.
All right, let's fast forward a bit to about 9,000 years ago, to a Neolithic village in central China called Jiahu. Here, archaeologists uncovered these pottery jars that contained the oldest confirmed alcohol recipe in the entire world. It was a mix of rice, honey, grapes, and hawthorn berries. This was not just some accidental rotting sludge. No way. This was a highly deliberate, carefully chosen blend designed to create a very specific flavor profile. Whoever mixed this was acting like an ancient mixologist, actively perfecting the real craft of brewing.
Section 4. Building Egypt with beer.
4 to 5. When we think about the laborers who built the Great Pyramids, you might imagine they were paid in gold coins or maybe sacks of grain. But the workers dragging those massive limestone blocks were actually paid a daily salary of 4 to 5 liters of beer.
And honestly, it makes total sense. Put yourself in their shoes for just a second.
If you are doing literal back-breaking labor, dragging limestone through the scorching hot desert heat, and someone walks up and offers you the ultimate choice, a heavy bag of metal coins that you can't eat or drink, or 5 liters of cold, refreshing beer, I mean, what are you picking? I think we'd all take the beer for sure.
But the crazy thing is, it wasn't just about catching a buzz or cooling off. In ancient Egypt, beer was basically the ultimate multi-tool. Yes, it was a daily salary, but it was also a clean water alternative, because the brewing process naturally purified the pretty badly contaminated water from the Nile. It served as a really heavy caloric meal to keep the laborers going, and even functioned as a medical prescription. Doctors would actually mix herbs directly into it. Top all that off with the fact that it was viewed as a sacred, religious offering from the god Osiris. Literally, one single drink acted as a paycheck, a water filter, a meal, medicine, and a prayer.
Section 5. The Catalyst for Civilization.
So, let's step back and look at the big picture here. 10 million years ago, our primate ancestors sought out fermented fruit simply as a survival mechanism. 13,000 years ago, nomadic humans were brewing in bedrock caves way before they even knew how to farm. 9,000 years ago, settled societies were developing incredibly complex brewing recipes. And by 5,000 years ago, entire ancient empires were literally running on a beer-based economy. Alcohol didn't come after we built civilization. It was a primary driver in its creation.
Which leaves us with this final, completely wild question. Did the impulse for a drink actually build the modern world? Sure, the ingredients have gotten better, and our cups have definitely gotten fancier over the millennia. But the next time you sit down to enjoy a drink, remember, you aren't just having a beverage. You are answering a 10-million-year-old biological instinct, an instinct that quite literally motivated our ancestors to invent the world we live in today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.